die saak vir ons 'n geweldige groot voorreg om met julle te gesels. Vreeslik dankie vir die tyd wat julle afstaan om by ons te kom kuier. Ek weet dis 'n moeilike tyd van die dag, maar baie dankie daarvoor. Ons het regtig groot waardering, want hierdie tipe van bymekaar kom en informasie sessies, vrae en antwoorde is krities belangrik vir wat ons besig is om te doen, wat CapeXit besig is om te doen en die rigting wat ons inslaan. Dit is gelukkig nie politiek nie. So dit behoort 'n lekker vrae en antwoorde sessie te wees. Ons wil niks politiek praat nie. Alles gaan hier oor die toekoms van CapeXit en waarheen ons op pad is. So ek wil sommer met die intrapslag vir Willem en die ouens hier by die Valley sê, julle ouens is fenomenaal hoor. Ek meen die feit dat Willem gesê het, luister, reël dit, die fasiliteite is tot julle beskikking, kom gesels met die mense en vertel vir hulle waaroor CapeXit en Weskaap onafhanklikheid gaan. Willem, hy is erns, hy is vreeslik besig. Willem, vir jou en jou personeel verskriklik baie dankie. Ek gaan nie julle tyd mors nie, uit die aard van die saak is dit nie ek wat met almal wil gesels nie. Ek wil graag vra terwille van die interaksie. Ons gaan baie minder praat as wat ons gaan vra beantwoord. Des het gekom van Kaapstad af, almal weet van Des, party kom nou vandag vir die eerste keer ontmoet. Des vir jou ook, vir al die moeite om hier te wees van Kaapstad af, vroeg vanmorgen gery en hy sê vir my, hy moes 'n bietjie stadig gery, anders was hy 10 uur al hier. Dis die typiese passie waarmee ons dinge doen. Ons wil daar kom sodat ons kan begin gesels. So ek dink terwille van 'n praktiese reëling, Des sal as jy 'n vraag het, steek jou hand op, Des sal ek met graag antwoord. Des gaan vir terwille van ons kykers by die huis of by die werk op die basis internet. Terwille van ons kykers, goeiedag aan julle ook, ek het amper vergeet. Terwille van die kykers gaan Des die vraag beantwoord. Dis nie omdat ons dom is nie, dis terwille van die uitsending wat huis toe gaan, sodat die mense wat nie die gehoor kan hoor nie, ten minste die vraag kan hoor. So, sonder enige verdere tyd, Des Palm, operasionele direkteur van CapeXit, die brein, die lopende ensiklopedie oor Weskaap, onafhanklik wording en die prosesse daarmee saam. Des, beskiklik baie dankie. Die verhoog is jou dankie. Ek weet jy hou nie vreeslik van verhoog en luidsprekers nie, maar all yours, sir. Baie dankie.
Goeiemiddag, ek dink nadat Rian daai intro gedoen het en baie aangegaan het daarmee. Sy kennis is ook al baie groot in die Kaap van onafhanklikheid. Maar aan almal van julle, middag, welkom. Ek kan net herhaal wat Rian gesê het, baie dankie aan Willem. Dit is altyd lekker om te staan op 'n skoolplek. Die hele atmosfeer en die karakter van so 'n plek is lekker. So dit gaan lekker wees om te gesels. Kom ons begin by waar alles begin het. In 2008 het ek redelik begin rondkyk en begin besef wat gebeur in Suid-Afrika. Die skrif is aan die muur. Julle is almal okay as ek Afrikaans praat? Ja. You guys want to go to English? You're gonna kill me. We can do it in English, guys, I've got no problem. Okay, in 2008, I realized that one has to step back and critically look at what's happening in South Africa. We often hear the phrase being coined, enough is enough. Every farm murder, every attack, every violent crime, people will say enough is enough. You know what? It's not enough anymore to just say enough is enough. You've got to get up and do something and become actively involved. So in 2008, I realized that we have to do something. I then started a group called the Western Cape Action Forum. How that came about, a friend of mine called me one day and he said to me, he was highly upset. And he said to me that we had to go to Johannesburg for a meeting. We couldn't get to the airport because they were throwing stones on the M2, with the net result that he lost a fairly major contract. Then I realized, let's do something. So I started the Western Cape Action Forum, around about 2010. So Western Cape Action Forum got involved in doing protest drives. We changed somebody to the statue, Jan van Riebeek, when the guys started defacing statues. And in general, we were a civic group which were just protesting against whatever was going on. up to the end of 2017. At the end of 2017, we realized that now we really have to step up our game. And we have to structure what we're trying to do. Now, independence has been on the radar of the Western Cape Action Forum since late 2008. So January 2018, we registered CapeXit. In June 2019, CapeXit became an NPO. And December last year, CapeXit became a member of the Emerging States, Emerging African States, which is an organization registered in, I think, in Washington. CapeXit has got one sole purpose, and that is the independence of the Western Cape. Okay, nothing else. Like Rian mentioned, we're non-political. It's a non-racial issue. For us, it's about economic survival. If anybody doubts that South Africa is hurtling towards what they call the fiscal cliff, then I don't think you're really up to speed with what's happening in this country. So CapeXit started out in 2018. We took the biggest part of that year to look at what was happening around the world in terms of secession. Secession is not a new thing. CapeXit is not reinventing the wheel. We have over 230 countries that's already seceded successfully. Today they are new sovereign countries. At the moment we have 114 countries which are busy with secession. The latest one to join this group is Texas. About 3 months ago, they really started getting up, wanting to secede. Texas wants to secede for exactly the same reason that we do. They feel that they contribute a massive amount to their national economy, and they get nothing back. The Western Cape is nothing different. In 2017, we contributed 632 billion rand to the national GDP up north, the Thule House. 632 billion. We get back every year, if we're lucky, 8%. So we get back, in that year we got back 50 billion, of which 10 billion was a grant with special conditions. So in effect we got back 40 billion. So look at those figures, keep it in your mind. 632 billion went north and 50 billion came back. So we're pretty much in the same position as what Texas is in. We're contributing 14% to the national GDP and we get back a pittance. So we've looked at all the secessions in the world. Then we decided that we're going to start getting the registrations from people to physically say that we support two things. We will vote in a referendum and we do support independence. This is not a Facebook like or a WhatsApp you send and say, I like the idea. It's a physical form that you fill in with your name, your cell number, your ID number, which province you're in, and you tick those two boxes and you sign it and you date it. So why are we doing that? We need the will of the people. If you look at our document, Right to Independence, it says two things. The one thing that says we are not professional people. We are building contractors, estate agents, restaurant managers. We're not politicians. We're not learned scholars of politics. We are not that. The second thing it says is the independence of the Western Cape is subject to the will of the people. That is it is the most critical requirement for independence. So the will of the people means the majority of the people in the Western Cape must support independence. So where do we get that figure that we need? We go to the IEC, their database, the very recent one, and if we look at the registered or the guys that voted in the Western Cape, we find that we need 1.555 million people in the Western Cape to support independence. We round it off to 1.6. So the first step we do is we gain the will of the people. We get that registrations in. End of 2019, we had 7,000 registrations. Sunday past, we had 775,000. So you can see the growth we had just over more than a year. When we get to 800,000, we're halfway. And when we get to 1 million, then we're going to start having very interesting conversations with very big organizations and political parties. We're already having those. So this is the phase that we're currently in. Now, when you approach independence, you've got to approach independence holistically. You can't just drive for a referendum. And in fact, if you tell me that we can have a referendum tomorrow, I'm going to say to you, no, thank you. Because we need to have everything in place. So you've got to have your interim government in place. You've got to have all your shadow government, your interim government, all your policy papers have got to be in place. All of those are being written at the moment. But we got to the point where the moment the referendum carries the yes vote, that can come into effect. And you can place that and say that is the interim government for the 90 days after the referendum. So we approaching all those phases at the same time. We will probably get very close to our figure towards the end of the year, and then the international process kicks in. So the questions we get, and some of you may want to ask, is that the South African government won't allow this. It is not up to them to allow it or not. This is an international process. So we go according to Articles 1 and Article 20 of the humanitarian articles of the United Nations and also into the International Bill of Rights. And according to that process, we are going to claim the referendum and get to the point of independence. In fact, the President of South Africa can't call a referendum. You can only call a national referendum. Only the Premier of the Western Cape can call a referendum. And we know he already said no, but that's fine, we were expecting that. So what's the system of government that we propose? At the moment, we have a one-party state and we've got a top-down governance. We all know that. We see it every day. The government system we propose is a direct democracy. So it will be equal to or similar to the Swiss canton system. And in our case, we'll have 6 district governments, and they will all, the power will be decentralized down to municipal level, where each municipality will govern themselves. And that will work up to a district level, and that will work up to a central government level. So that's the system we propose in terms of governance. Now, CapeXit will not become a political party, and we won't form part of the new government. You can't have a direct democracy and say that you are going to interfere. You're going to propose what the flag looks like, or what money must be used. That is not. If you say the will of the people must decide about things like that. So that's the direction we're going in the overall framework of this. There's a lot of things that plugs into this. Wait, the lights are quite hot. We're looking at fiscal policies. People will say that the Western Cape can't survive economically on its own. I've just quoted to you the figure that we contribute to the GDP. We're also looking at things like the TEAL tax, which is the total economic activity levy, which means all funds going into a bank account, any bank account, whether it's corporate or private, gets taxed 0.5%. All funds going out get taxed 0.5%. In total, you'll tax 1%. The economists look at this and they say that you'll increase your tax net by 27-fold. And while you do that, you do away with your VAT, your value-added tax, your company taxes, your personal taxes. Will be brought down to a level of virtually zero. So that's one part of the economic plan. What we do is we appoint people, when we do the portfolio papers or the policy papers, we appoint people that are specialists in the field. If we look at energy, for instance, we have a German professor, his doctorate is in alternative energy, and he's running with that portfolio in terms of creating energy using trade winds, the sea currents, and those are the kind of people that we've got in place and appointed. We're also busy, there's a doctor in constitutional law, and he's busy writing the new constitution for the Western Cape. So that is where the level of progress we are at the moment. I'm going to, I think, let's start working through questions, and as we work through questions, let's see, there may be salient points which I'm not covering. So I think I'm going to open the floor for questions because that normally runs into about an hour. So I think let's start with that. Any questions about anything? Nothing. No.
Wait for the first guy.
What does
Here's
TEAL
the first
stand
guy.
for?
Say again.
TEAL, what does it stand for?
TEAL. TEAL stands for Total Economic Activity Levy. It was this, if I can't use the word design, it was compiled by Nick van Zyl, I think in 1986. Question. Lekker Afrikaans of Frans?
Ja.
Question.
I've read up about CapeXit and I try and inform uninformed people about it. Because there are a lot of people who underneath feel safe, but they haven't got a vehicle. But the most common response you get is fear. Fear of the Red Berets. I just said to the man next to me, if this meeting was held in a bigger center where there are more people, the Red Berets would have been at the gate. That's the fear that they instill in us. And how are you going to counter that?
The question is, how do we combat the right word, the fear that the people has got about what we're doing? The interesting thing is we have threats by the Red Berets that they will disrupt meetings and whatever. I haven't seen one single one of them yet. This is the answer to what you do. You create the reality on the ground, and that reality you create is called the support for independence. There's one thing a politician can't handle, and that is public opinion. So that's why CapeXit is not fighting this thing on a political field. We're fighting it on the field called the will of the people. We normally have fear because people are uninformed. In this case, we have people that will tell you it can't happen because the ANC won't let it happen. It's not up to the ANC to make this happen. It's up to the citizens. If you look at Article 1 and Article 20, it will tell you all peoples. It doesn't say all political parties. It doesn't say all politicians. It says all peoples have the right to dispose of their own wealth and their own, in our case, the contribution to the GDP. So, the moment people come together, you all see that little picture of the plank over the cliff, and there's one guy standing there and 20 standing here, and he's threatening the 20. And if the 20 decide to get off the plank, the balance is tipping. Okay. We need to educate people and inform them, number one, it's their right to have independence. It's an enshrined right in the Constitution. Now, we get to the South African Constitution and we get to Article 235 or Section 235. The good news about Section 235 is that it allows us to strive or drive for independence or self-determination, as they call it. The bad thing about 235 is there were never any law written to underpin that. So we can't go to the Constitutional Court and say, we refer to the case of A versus B, where the court declared this article to be valid. Okay. But why is it important to have that in there? If you look at what Catalonia tried to secede and it failed. So people will say, secession doesn't work. Look at Catalonia. The problem with Catalonia is that the Spanish Constitution does not allow fragmentation of the sovereign state of Spain. That was the problem. We may do it because we have 235. Now there's two concepts you've got to differentiate between. You get people talk about self-determination, and you get CapeXit that talks about sovereign independence. So what's the difference between the two? People say to us, okay, you're going to be like Urania. Now, you all know where Urania is. Okay. There's another enclave up north called Tuinfontein, which is pretty much the same. No, we're not going to be like Urania. Urania is a private corporation called Flakieskraal Investments that bought a farm, and they're selling shares in the farm, which allows you to build. Urania's got one problem: it's still part of South Africa. And the next problem is called expropriation without compensation. So I can go to Urania's gate, ask for the keys, and they're gone. That's the problem with self-determination. Whether it's cultural self-determination, whether it's language self-determination, you're fighting for a little pocket of survival, and Big Brother called South Africa can do that, and you're gone. So you have to go for sovereign independence. You'll hear internationally they refer to this as we have like an internal self-determination, which is typically like the guys fighting to do their own municipal services, they have their own language, and then you have external self-determination, which is sovereign independence. So you've got to differentiate between those two concepts. Back to your question, it's absolutely a point of educating people about what their rights are. That dispels fear. Because you're fearful because you don't know what your rights are. And if people doubt that right, they can look at the 231 countries that seceded under far worse conditions. Some of them with very strong rebel movements, with massive fighting. The difference in South Africa is this. The moment you build your support base, now CapeXit has got the second biggest support base in the Western Cape. We're just under the DA, and we're close enough to worry them. When you build your support base, you also educate people as to the right to have. And the bigger you build that support base, the more you can't be ignored. And it will be a fatal mistake for any segment of South Africa, be it red berets or blue berets or green berets, to start infringing on your right as a citizen to become independent. Because they will, I don't think there's anything left economically of South Africa to wipe out, but I think they'll lose that last bit of edge they got. Other questions?
Yes, can you elaborate on the other two groups also advocating for independence?
Which two?
Advocacy Independency Group.
KPI?
And the other one is the Unite, what's it?
ULA. Okay. Cape Independence Advocacy Group is a political pressure group. What they're doing is they are bombarding the provincial government with facts and figures, and they keep on referring back to the international right to have a referendum. So they are absolutely a political pressure group. ULA has got a total different course on than us. They wanted a much bigger piece of real estate than what we want. I think they're happy to Transvaal and the Free State. And we differ totally in the way we look at where we want to get and how we want to get to it. The good thing about all the groups, and there's one secession, I don't know where it was, but there were 9 different organizations pushing for independence. The good thing about each and every group and person that pushes for independence is they put the word independence out there. They put it in the public mind. And people will ignore you today, but in a week's time or a month's time, that penny will drop. And then they will start.
The colored people not to fear and to register on CapeXit, because the sooner we reach 1.5 million, the sooner we can have an election.
Question was, how do we combat the fear and also, in the same time, educate the colored people? CapeXit wants independence for everyone in the Western Cape, regardless of your religious belief, about your race. It's not about color, it's not about your faith or your religion, it's about economic survival. When we started out, we thought we're going to reach out for all the community leaders. That was a challenge. The Khoi has got something like 17 different factions. The brown people, I'm going to use the term brown and not colored. The brown people, when you're in a meeting with them, they will tell you we have no leader. Okay. They battle to identify a leader. And that's the problem with politics. The moment somebody comes into a position of power, it goes about the paycheck. So they abandon people. Now, I just want to digress. That's the other beauty of a direct democracy. At the moment, if you don't like what's happening, you've got to change the status quo at the polling station. Once every 4 years, if you're lucky. With a direct democracy, if you look at Switzerland, you can actually call a referendum on any issue. You can call a referendum if your councillor is not looking after the paper, and then Y would say, no, X means nothing. He's got no pull, he's got no validity with the community, you must talk to me. So then we actually decided, quite some time ago, to reach out to the people directly. And the way we do that, there's a lady in Malmesbury called Amber Boyson, typical example. When Rian cycled into Malmesbury, he had a massive response. There were balloons and they were all over the show. That is what you do. You reach out through the activists. And then you've got to educate them in terms of what independence is about and what their rights are. Because I'm telling you now, and I'm a born Cape, so I know the Brandt people. I grew up in a little place there called Epping. It's a fact that the Brandt people were sidelined before 1994, and they're even being sidelined more after 1994. So now we find them in a position of not trusting anybody. For instance, I will not have this meeting in Mossel Bay. I'll have one of our Brandt activists on the stage sharing the message to you. Okay. You've got to build the trust. And the way you build that trust is by telling the Brandt community in a direct democracy, I'm not going to run Mossel Bay. You are. You live in Mossel Bay. Flip side of the coin, you're not going to run Tableview. I will run Tableview. So you've got to make them understand that they will be directly involved in the structure of government. But it's building trust.
How do you plan to do that?
Meeting with them, talking with them, having workshops like we had with 55 leaders, supporting them out back in their community. We have open platforms. They can ask us questions any time of the day. We'll give them the information. It's all about connecting. We can't connect with them through Facebook or through WhatsApp. We've got to do a physical connection.
What about if we go into the communities ourselves or get colored people to help us and educate the people there? Will it help the cause?
Question is,
Get them to register, even though they don't have internet. They can fill in a form and we can use it. Tick, 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 you need 1.5.
the question is if it will help by going into the communities, physically with a form in your hand, sit down with a person, explain to them what it's about and get them to register. The short answer is absolutely. We need each and every person that can do that. You start by contacting or reaching out to the closest circle you've got and then let that go. Mia will tell you she's got Gerda in Sierpark. What's her name? Yeah. Gilda in Sierpark, I met her at a workshop. What a fantastic woman. You look at her, you talk to her, she's got a passion for what she's doing, she's reaching out to the community. They will take a stack of forms and they will walk down the street and they will knock on your door and talk to you. We don't have that confidence. If I take a stack of forms and walk down in Tableview, the guy's going to lock his gate and take out the shotgun. He's going to think I'm going to try to rob him. We can learn from the Brandt people. In terms of having no hang-ups, having a passion for what they do and spreading the word.
And stop fearing.
Absolutely. You've got to spend, you only have to spend about half an hour in their company and you get a totally different view of how they do things, and it's a passion.
Because we have it the same here. There's a, I don't know what's it called. I'm from Pretoria. What is it to be a scholar in life? What can I avoid?
What's that?
Asla. Okay, no, maar dit die hele gebaai. Anyway. Kwankaba. Okay. Kwankaba. The people in Kwankaba fear for their lives. The people that watch the cars when everybody goes and eat. When they go back with their food that they get at the restaurants. It gets stolen from them. They take away their money. They beat them. They live in that fear every day. But they can all stand up and say no.
You're absolutely right. I had one of the workshops we talked about gangsterism. And I've got a very dear friend, Muslim guy, he's now, I think, 78. He puts me to shame. He says to me, you must come to Lentegeur. I said, what's happening in Lentegeur? I know where it is. What's happening in Lentegeur? He said, we've got no gangster problem. We've got no drug problem. Why? Because the community took ownership. We each have to take ownership of what we're doing, and we've got to take ownership of what your rights are. Don't be scared. The church is taking ownership of his fact that he wants to be violent. You take ownership of what you do. I walked in the one workshop we had with the 55 people, all brown and Khoi and Muslim. I walked in amongst them and I said to them, ek is eintlik kwaad vir julle. I'm actually upset with you. And they all looked at me, what's coming now? I'm upset with you because you keep on underselling yourself. You refuse to take ownership. Stop underselling yourself. Stop underselling your own ability. Stop that. Don't look at me to give you a handout. Stand up on your own 2 feet and take it. And that is what we've got to convey, that message over to them. It's their right. Not without right, it's their right.
I come from Pretoria East. The first time I set my foot here, I come from Pretoria East.
Our deepest sympathy.
So I come from Gangster Valley.
Make yourself wide open for that one.
Exactly. So I come from Pretoria East. I was employed by ERA property management. Okay, so I just eiendomsagent ERA. Okay.
Kom Afrikaans praat, is hè?
Ek het 'n week op 'n marketingbestuurder voorstel visa. Okay. So ek was aangestel toe ek op Pretoria was. Ek het 'n huis gekoop in Dalabaai met foto's en 'n video. Die eerste keer toe ek in Dalabaai kom, was die 13de Januarie hierdie jaar. Dis sien ek my huis vir die eerste keer. Dis sien ek Mossel Bay vir die eerste keer. Dis sien ek almal vir die eerste keer. So te sê ek vir die mense, het hulle gehoor van CapeXit, want dis die rede hoekom ek hier is. Die mense sê ja. Ek sê julle geregistreer. Hulle sê, ons weet nog van hierdie verjaardag. Maar as jy geregistreer sê, gaan hulle registreer. So hy tik, so hy nommers kry. Kijk, so, in Pretoria, werk ek aan registrasie. Ek sê altyd, die mense kyk my van, ek sê altyd, julle bly te lang en lalala. Pretoria is die polisie nie in jou kant toe. Kijk, Pretoria moet jy braai, jy ry met geld in jou kar. As jy vrou alleen is, jy van my vriendinne is gevang, in lockdown, met haar kind agter, deur polisiemans, polisie-uniform. Hulle trek haar af, sy is binne, sy verstaan jy, dis nog tyd, sy kan huis toe gaan, dit 6 hierdie aand, dis die lockdown wat is hier, trek haar af, met haar kind. Hulle sê vir haar, jy drank in die kar, sy sê nee, dit is 'n baba. Hulle sê vir haar, hulle haal 'n gun uit. Hulle klim die kar langsaam. Hulle sê vir haar, die geld. Sy sê ek het die geld op my en ek het 'n kluis in my huis. Hulle agtervolg haar polisiemanne. Hulle laat haar kluis oopsluit, hulle geld gee. En hulle sê vir haar, as jy praat,
Ja,
dis die realiteit.
jy's reg.
Jammer, maar hierso is die polisie aan ons kant. Hulle, jy kan nie braai nie. Hulle kom met jou en hulle vertel jy hoe jy vrou jy
Ek gaan jou onderbreek, jy's reg, ons op 'n livestream, so ons moet vrae vat. Maar jy welkom in die Kaap, nommer 1. En nommer 2, jy's heeltemal reg. there's an absolute clear distinction between the way people are thinking about their own rights and their own survival in the north and what we're thinking here. And it comes back to the fact that they can only think segmented self-determination, while we can think sovereign independence. That's the difference between the two. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
I would like to ask what Brexit is doing outside of South Africa. I've got a son who lives in England, where he lived for 5 years. And a year ago I told him about Brexit. And he immediately went on the internet and he says, if Brexit succeeds, he'll be the first one to be back. And there are lots of people here who most of you have people outside of the country. And they want them back. I want my son back. But he won't come back under these circumstances. What is Brexit and not Brexit?
You had me seriously worried there.
Well, they suffer under Brexit, living in England. And what is CapeXit doing in terms of getting our skilled people? He's an electrical engineer. He can work in this country. We need them. What is CapeXit doing to get those people back? Not to get them back, but to give them the path to say, right.
The question is, what can CapeXit do to get, especially all our young, skilled people that emigrated, to come back to the Western Cape? The only thing that CapeXit can do their utmost best is to create that reality on the ground and to push as hard as we can to get to the point of a referendum and independence. Then that environment will develop automatically. Because if you look at the factors why people are immigrating, it's either they can't find work or because of safety. Now I can assure you that we used to have it about once every 3-4 weeks. We now have it 2 or 3 times a week. The latest one is an IT company with 3 directors and about 20 odd people that moved from Johannesburg to the Western Cape. We get that every week. When we started out, we were talking to, I would say, a salaried level person, salary earners. That's the people we reached out to. We are finding over the last couple of months that we're talking to corporate people, we're talking to stock exchange listed companies, which are saying we're going to move to the Western Cape. Why do they do that? Because they know it's about economic survival. It's about nothing else. It's not a race thing, it's not a politics thing. So the moment we can create that environment after independence, we will have people coming back.
The question was, in England, for instance, where most of the South Africans are, and Australia, there must be sort of informal groupings of ex-South Africans.
No.
Isn't it an opportunity for CapeXit to expose,
To reach out to them.
to reach out?
No.
Because there are groups that, there are South African shops in London.
Yeah.
Just a little pamphlet like this on the counter would help a lot.
Absolutely. Again, the question, how do we reach out to the expats? How do we make them aware of what's happening? It's a multi-pronged thing. Obviously, you try and reach out through electronic media as far as you can. But we must remember this is an organization or a mission that's growing every day. If we look at awareness, and again I'll come back to the end of 2019, we had 7,000 registrations. We now have 775,000. That happened without a budget of 10 million rand for marketing and advertising. It happened because of word of mouth and reaching out, talking to your circle of friends, and they talk to their friends. But we do have people overseas. We've got a very active guy in the Netherlands who's spreading the word. He walks into his councillor's office and says, did you hear about South Africa? And this is happening, and this is what CapeXit is doing. So we do have that, but we would like to have much more of it. So you must ask your son to read about it and spread the word.
It's already registered.
That's brilliant.
Okay, so I see international companies like Google already investing in the Western Cape. And they're just one of them. They're doing, I don't know, whatever Google does for technology and IT. Is that because of CapeXit?
Now, at this point in time, we're not claiming the fame that big corporates are investing in South Africa because of us. But what is a fact is they're becoming aware of the fact that the Western Cape wants to become independent. And that's creating a favourable climate for them to move here. So what you'll find now is what we have at the moment is companies within South Africa, Johannesburg and those places which they're much closer to the independence thing, they're upping their roots and moving. What's happening from overseas is that we have, from the side of technology, we have a lot of companies that are saying they will invest in us the moment we become independent. But I would like to say that Google is doing that because of us, but it's not.
Yeah, back to grassroots. Who in Mossel Bay is a CapeXit person? Because take myself for example. Now you guys come on Facebook, great, you say share with your friends, you're limited to 50 a day. Then I picked up 2 days ago, I've already got 4 or 5 people, they come back and they say, thank you, the other people are doing. But that is moving very slowly, yes it's moving. But if we've got everybody here, if you had a bunch of forms, and we've got somebody in Mossel Bay who we can speak to, that somebody used the hen that's laying the golden egg. We can all take forms, we can go to people, we can get them to fill out the forms, because you're here today. You must really believe, most of you, in what is happening and what we need to do. Because people, I'm telling you now, if we don't get this right, we're gone. I come from Rhodesia. I've lost a farm there. Alright? And I can tell you, this is our last chance. So, if we've got somebody in Mossel Bay, we've got the forms, we can go out there. Now, I can tell you, you speak to people, and I'm sure a lot of people will say, yeah, you get 2 things. One is, yes, I want to join CapeXit. The other one is, it will never happen. Well, that never happen will change very quickly when people start saying it can happen. But we've got to have an action to do it. And that action starts with all of us. Yeah. Now, you know what? Savvy in Mossel Bay, and not just Mossel Bay, in our whole country at the moment, the Cape region. Everybody's got a lot to say, and you say you want to do something. How many of you are involved in a watch group in your area? How many of you? How many of you are going out there and actively saying to people, you know what, here's a form, join. That person, you'll say he's going to, but he'll go home, and you said it the other day, you know what, we're all too comfortable. And we are too comfortable. We've got our cell phones, we've got our house, we've got our job, we've got our income and all the rest. But it's slowly diminishing. It's diminishing, just like it's done all the way down Africa. And by the time we wake up, it's too late. This, guys, and movements like this are our last chance. And if we don't do it quickly, it's not going to happen. Am I right?
Absolutely.
So everybody here, can you take the responsibility today and say, today, I'm going to sign people up. And let's see, who's going to be that person with the forms that we can get the forms to and get it to Desia. And we can that figure, I'm telling you, there's much more than that people who want this to be our new country. They really do. They've had how long? 26 years to screw up a good country. Alright? And now, it's time we got our country back. And everybody, I think, thinks like it. If you're here now and you don't believe that, I'm going to fall off my chair. Can I fall off my chair? No. But how many of your friends, if you actually took a form to them and you said, there, put your name down there, and put your money where your mouth is and give it back to you, I'm taking it to there. And then we need to do that through the whole of the Cape. You're fine, and my hat off to you, Meneer, I know what you are to do, I really do. But who's our guy from Mossel Bay?
Absolutely. I agree with you.
Here's my question. Who's our Mossel Bay?
Rian is in Bay and Mia is in Mossel Bay.
Okay. So guys, here I am. You know how many people I've got in my age that will join me?
Okay, so Mia, if you can make contact with the gentleman, then it's good. I'm with you now. Question at the back. Yeah?
I was just going to ask that gentleman, where does he live?
Oh,
He
okay.
doesn't live in Great Bag, does he? No.
I live in Johannesburg.
In Dana Bay, okay.
Okay, there you go. Your neighbor is sitting there.
Yeah.
And I have a question.
Yeah, okay.
I have a question. I ask two questions.
Right.
Twee vrae. Die een vraag is daar iemand van die Koran? Is dit ietsie wat ons nou bespreek? Kan dit in die Koran verskyn in die Mossel Bay Advocacy? Sal hulle daaroor skryf? Sal iemand ietsie daaroor sê? As ons weer ietsie so het, kan ons nou iemand van die Koran nooi net om ietsie daaroor te skryf? Ek weet nie wat gebeur in die Kaap betreffende publisiteit, sal ek maar sê.
Okay, kom ek antwoord jou vraag. Met Rian se fietstoer het ons baie blootstelling gekry met die plaaslike koerante. Die probleem is hoofstroomkoerante wat natuurlik is geaffilieer in 'n sekere rigting. Ons verkies om met plaaslike gemeenskapskoerante te werk en ons kan absoluut by die volgende praatjie kan ons 'n joernalis of twee nooi. Rian se fietstoer was tipies van 'n persoon wat besluit het ek het nou genoeg gesê, genoeg is genoeg, nou gaan ek iets doen. En my hoed af vir hom, dit was 'n fenomenale toer. Die blootstelling was massief geweest en die koerante het dit, toe hy te plek begin het dit so begin en ek dink voor hy lys daarin is, het die koerante begin vra wat gaan aan. So ons moet daai blootstelling moet ons kry in die pers. En op gemeenskapsvlak is ons gelukkig daarmee. As die Mossel Bay koerant dit kan doen, die George koerant Wilderness, dan is dit reg.
Die tweede vraag is Die tweede vraag is, watter mense mag registreer? Iemand wat in Pretoria en Johannesburg woon, maar hy is 'n eienaar, hy het 'n erf byvoorbeeld hier. Kan hy registreer? So 'n belastingbetaler, sal ek maar sê in die Kaap, of 'n langtermyn inwoner, wie kwalifiseer nou eintlik om te kan registreer om daai syfers op te spoor?
Die vraag is wie kwalifiseer om te registreer? Daar's twee dele van daai vraag. Die een is wie kan registreer by CapeXit en die tweede deel is wie kan stem in 'n referendum. Die eerste deel, wie kan registreer by CapeXit? Enigiemand, ongeag van waar jy bly. CapeXit het twee databases. Die een is die plaaslike Weskaap databasis en die ander een is die internasionale steun. Dan moet hulle letterlik almal buitekant die Weskaap. Dis internasionale steun. Wie kan stem in 'n referendum? Slegs persone wat in die Weskaap woon. Net soos die OVK tans daarna kyk, jy kan nie jou adres in Germiston gee en kom stem in Mossel Bay nie. Jy moet 'n fisiese adres hê in Mossel Bay. So wat ons vir die persone sê is, as jy in Germiston bly en jy het 'n vakansiehuis in Mossel Bay, verander jou adres. Verander jou adres na Mossel Bay toe, dan kan jy stem in die referendum.
Kevin and I are active on the Rian Folkstyle, ULA, the Neighborhood Watch. We are involved in our business, the people day after day, one-on-one all the time. Our 17-year-old son will be 18 in this year. Dealing with people one-on-one, with our friends. Come on, join, oh no, you're going to do it. They never do it. So what Ken says now is putting it in their face, educating them. Can you say, what is CapeXit doing? No, what am I doing to advance what I believe in, which is being led forward through CapeXit? This is just a vehicle. We have to drive it. Yeah. And it's us as individuals, one-on-one, with each of our friends. I've got friends who are going to have a golf tomorrow, I can't see you, I can't do coffee, I'm going out to dinner, I'm having a dinner. You're having a dinner party. How many people? Use every single opportunity. This is important. We can double that figure in a week, I'm telling you now. We can do it if we do it properly, and it means standing by our convictions and doing it one-on-one. Every person, your circles just expand and it will just multiply. We've got youngsters that are on TikTok. If you can see the influencers, be an influencer of your immediate environment, and you're just going to see this thing multiply. 1.6 million is a drop in the ocean. Someone on TikTok can reach 20 million. like this. If you are convincing and you're passionate and you're determined and this is what you want, and it's something that's not going to want, absolutely don't need it. We can do it. But we can't just sit here, a little group here in Mossel Bay. Actually, this is so pathetic. And this is not because of COVID. This is because everybody else is just comfortable. They're watching their Netflix at night. They see a flag on Facebook, oh, I don't like this. One-on-one, guys, your little circle will expand like this and you'll have this in right.
You're absolutely right. It's complacency. It's the comfort bubble that we all sit in. And people tend to think it will never happen in the Western Cape because the DA governs here. Now, I'm not going to go political on you. I'm going to give you a fact. The DA cannot effectively govern where it counts. During lockdown, the Western Cape government decided that all you guys that smoke can smoke. And the national government said, no, you're not going to smoke. And poof, there it goes. Up in smoke. Let's take an example. This morning, I drove from Tableview along the N1. I came over Worcester. It's actually a very nice road. I think you drive it there. Through Robertson. Why? Because the R300 was a battle zone yesterday. They were throwing stones, they were burning trucks, they were whatever. So we asked the DA, what are you going to do about it? And they go, we can't do anything because policing is a national mandate. And then we say to the DA, please go to your provincial government law, which states that no pedestrian is allowed on a national road, and go and lock them up. Why won't they do it? Because there's no political will. Why is the noon, I think in any other informal settlement, have you seen how they are expanding? The noon was as big as this glass, and now it's as big as this vat. When the DA came into power, they did away with the office of the environmental control person. And they said, it's okay, we will function under the national mandate of environmental control. If you had an environmental control officer, he can use provincial law to do something about this, but they don't. And that is where it's going to get interesting after independence, because any political party that's got a national mandate has got to start rethinking his strategy, because now it's a direct democracy. You can't go and force your rules and regulations that works in the north, you can't come and force it down to the people in the Western Cape, because they'll take you out of your office by a referendum. But I fully agree with you, and Ken, it's complacency. You guys have been through it. You can see the signs. You know what's happening. We still live, like I say, in that bubble. There's not too many potholes to bypass in the road. I spoke to a gentleman this morning. He says he refuses to go to Joburg. Me too. If you threaten my life, I'll go to Joburg. If we can only take the people in the Western Cape and go and show them what the rest of South Africa looks like. Now, and there's certain councillors that they don't really like me, and I don't really give a damn whether they like me or not. If you come and tell me that look at the Western Cape, we're governing better than elsewhere in South Africa. My answer to them is, if you govern better, you're not actually governing good or well, whatever the word may be. You're only doing better than the guy that's doing really bad. And that doesn't mean you're good. You're just not as bad. Look at the writing on the wall. It's happening. You would not have believed a year ago or 2 years ago that expropriation without compensation can happen. How many of you know exactly what that bill says? Can anybody tell me exactly what that bill says?
Expropriate anything.
That's it. Absolutely. The bill does not say that they can expropriate land. They can expropriate any asset. Your caravan, your boat, and don't forget your bank account. They can expropriate it. Nobody would have thought this was possible 2 years ago. because we're being protected by the so-called best constitution in the world. It is a good constitution, but you must have the political will to stick to the constitution. If you just willy-nilly change whatever doesn't suit you, we're going to have a problem. And I absolutely agree with you. We've got to get people out of that bubble, out of that complacency, that it won't happen here.
People that don't even vote. I've got like 6 friends that don't even want to vote.
Yeah.
It won't make a difference.
Yeah. Now, there you touched on another point. People don't vote because they're punched around politically. And you know what? I agree with them. Because politically, you will not change the status quo. How can I change the status quo in terms of the government? I have to vote for an opposition party that's going to win at the polls. Now, when the current government in the Western Cape start talking about jumping into bed with the ANC, I get very worried. And why is that? Because if any other opposition party ever gets to a percentage where they can threaten the DA, and the DA jumps into bed, although they say that thing, they only mention that in a national context. If they jump into bed with anybody else, your 4 years that you battled and fought to win at the polls means nothing. So you have to play this game on the field where there's no politics. And that is independence, subject to the will of the people, not subject to a politician.
Anybody else?
I drove all the way from George this morning to get here. When are you planning to have a similar situation or similar come together in George? I think there are more people at the moment in George. Population-wise is slightly bigger than Mossel Bay.
I'm going to do that classic thing called passing the buck. No, I'm just kidding. Mia and Rian is on this side of the world. They will obviously set up something for us. The moment we have the numbers and the people there. Normally we try and talk to a person like yourself within George and say, can you get people together? If you can't find the venue, we'll find the venue. And then once we have, today's a good meeting. Once we can get 15, 20, 25 people together, we will do it absolutely. Wat jy werk gekry.
Explain the governance, you know, in independent state.
Okay, the government.
Yeah.
Okay, the question is explain the model of government after independence. Go to our website, CapeXit.org, and you'll see the document called Road to Independence. That explains that the government system will be based on 6 district governments. If you look at the Western Cape at the moment, it's divided into 6 areas. Each district government will be, like I said, the power will be decentralized to municipal level. So we effectively want to move back to the system of municipalities. The Western Cape at the moment has got this thing called a mega city, which is a mega disaster. It's not working. We have to get each and every municipality functioning on its own within the framework of the overall budget from central government. So if we take Mossel Bay for instance, Mossel Bay will have a municipal office again with their own town planners, their own building inspectors, handling their own refuse removal. Everything that is happening in Mossel Bay will be done by Mossel Bay. The spin-off of this is that if you look at the employment side of things, at the moment, and again coming back to the brown areas, if you look at Mitchell's Plain, the amount of people travelling out of Mitchell's Plain to go and work somewhere else. I've asked the guy in Mitchell's Plain, what's your biggest problem? He said, the fact that I walked into the police station and the person behind the counter speaks Xhosa, doesn't understand me. What will happen after independence is Mitchell's Plain's services will be populated by the people from Mitchell's Plain. Nobody understands their community better than the person living in the community. I can't even come from Tableview and tell you what's happening in Mossel Bay. No idea. It's a lekker place to come for a holiday. It's nice to come to venues like this. Apart from that, I know nothing. So the people of Mossel Bay should have their own municipality and govern and rule their own affairs. So you'll decentralize to municipal level, go back to a district level, and then from there go back to a very lean central government model. So your central government will decide about things like defense, foreign affairs, all the other things. Your 6 districts will decide about virtually everything else. So that will be the model, which is very much a Swiss canton model, but it's tweaked to work for what we need.
Yes, sorry. And then the people that are going to be running those positions, okay, are they going to be voted in?
Yeah, the question is the people that runs with or governs within the, call it the municipal structure, will they be voted in? Yes, you must understand that after you've gone through the phase of your interim government or your transition government, you're going to get back into political elections again. A lot of people say, we don't want any political parties, we don't want politicians involved. You can't have that. You've got to have political parties. But what comes into play is the accountability part of it. A political party or a councillor will now be fully accountable. So it's going to be normal elections, but with local mandates.
Sorry, just elaborate again on the economic power of the Western Cape currently in terms of economic development compared to the rest of South Africa, that it is sustainable, so that independent Cape can survive by time.
The question is, can the independent Cape survive economically? Like I said earlier on, let's take the first stop, is the contribution to GDP. Already, if you keep 632 billion, instead of only getting 50 billion, if you look at the budget of the Western Cape government for the current financial year is about 77 billion. So that budget you can increase 9-fold. So that's your first stop. Your second stop is you introduce a till system. Now, and there's a lot of people here that are business owners, if I tell you that you don't have to pay your company tax anymore, or your personal tax, or your VAT, or your tax levies on fuel, which somebody said the other day the government takes 38 cents or something of each rand. If you don't have to do that available funds are now being used for a lot of things. It's going to be used for training of people. It's going to be used for expanding your business. So only from those 2 factors alone, you're creating a positive economic environment. Then you get, people will say, but you can't survive, you don't have gold. It's true, we don't have gold. We have, I think, 138 minerals in the Western Cape, which is lime, gypsum, a lot of things. And I'm not talking about our wines and exports and tourism. I met a gentleman on one of our awareness drives. He's currently one of the directors of a health department. He's now opened his own company because he's retiring next year. He's now the CEO of his own company. And his company is doing medical tourism. And he came to me and said, we like what you're doing. I've got 50 doctors in my company. Number 1, they're all going to register with CapeXit. And number 2, we're going to sit down and have a meeting. Now, typically, those are the guys that we will go to and say, please develop a policy paper for us around medical tourism. So that's another source of income. Then you get to the point where companies from outside, and they are already indicating that, they will stand at the door to invest. So economically, you will become probably the biggest economy on the African continent. At the moment, South Africa, I think, is very low down. The lower, I look at places like Ghana, for instance, and you will know, Ghana is developing brilliantly, positively, growing economy. We could also do that in South Africa if there weren't political agendas. So we'll do it in independent Western Cape.
Ja, dis ek wil net dit sê want daai vraag kom baie op. Wat mense moet besef, ek is jammer ek wil nou nie weer plezier sê nie. Maar wat mense moet besef, as jy 'n kommunistiese stelsel vervang met 'n demokratiese kapitalistiese stelsel, gaan jy baie mense kry wat gaan geld belê, fabrieke oprig, arbeid skep. Dis waarom ek gaan.
Absoluut reg. Die punt wat hy maak is, die oomblik as jy demokratiese kapitalistiese stelsel skep, gaan mense belê. Hulle gaan. En toe ons begin het met hierdie, was my gedagte, kom ons kyk of ons vrye handelszones kan skep. Ek dink aan Rasalgaima in die UAE en sulke plekke. En toe die tweetiel belastingsisteem op ons pad kom, toe besef ons die hele Weskaap van 'n vrye handelszone raak.
My question is also about the economics. We've got a few, about half a dozen big companies based in the Western Cape. Old Mutual, Pick n Pay, the Woolworths, there are quite a few you can name. But they are also national companies. How is Brexit going to counter or encourage them to stay in the Cape, in the Western Cape? Because at the moment, for instance, Old Mutual, most of their business is outside of the Western Cape. Woolworths, their big businesses are in the Rand. How are we going to handle that?
The question is, how will CapeXit encourage big corporates to stay in the Western Cape? The answer is, if I am a big corporate and I'm looking at a new sovereign country with a very positive economy, I will not move anywhere. We can see that from the fact that people are now moving the head office to the Western Cape, and we're not independent yet. When Namibia got their independence, everybody said, but what's going to happen to the banks and everything kept on like normal. The only thing you're doing now is you're trading cross-border. And we get people that sits in Pretoria and says, but if you go independent, I must have a visa and a passport. Yes, sir, you must. We're a new country. What do you do if you go to Namibia? You've got a passport. Okay. So, I'm going to be with you now. You've got to, if you look at the road to independence, the third chapter is called per capita. I'm briefly going to explain to you what that means. Question that comes up is people say, what's going to happen about state assets? What's going to happen about our ports and our military bases and our airports? There's no international law that states that if you secede from your host country, that you have to take over any part of the national debt. There's no law that states that. However, when Belgium seceded from Holland, from the Netherlands, they decided to follow, let's call it a gentleman's agreement. And the gentleman's agreement was, we will accept the per capita approach, which simply means you will look at what percentage your population is of the national population or the host country, and you will accept the same proportion of the national debt. So let's talk round figures. Let's say the Western Cape has got 10% of the national population. So we adopt 10% of the debt, which is, at the moment, I don't know if somebody can correct me, I think it's gone over 5 trillion rand. Yeah, thanks to COVID. What will come into play when we have the velvet divorce and we talk around the table would be things like what it's going to cost to decommission Kuberg. Conservative estimate is $500 million. We did speak to Eskom once, and they said they sorted, they've got 500 million rand, but I don't know where it is. It's gone. So we will make that sum. We will look at all the corruption that happened around COVID. So what I'm saying is we've got 5 billion in debt. We're saying we will take 10%. It's 5 trillion. We take 10%, it's 500 billion. But minus. However, look at this. If we take 500 billion and our contribution in 2017 was 632 billion, and we had a budget to run the Western Cape of 77 billion. The spare change of the contribution to the GDP in 1 year can buy out the per capita. And then when you do that, when you apply the per capita, you automatically take over all assets. The question that comes up is, I'm in the Navy, and I'm from the Eastern Cape. So now the Western Cape goes independent, so what must I do? You stay. You carry on with your work. You're becoming the new sovereign country's government employee. But if you prefer to go back to the Eastern Cape, then you go back to the Eastern Cape. People say, what's going to happen to my pension? Oh, I've got a surprise for you. You shall have a pension. Remember when I grew up and I started working on the railways, my dad said to me, do me one favour, please, go and work for the government and you're sure about your pension. Rest his soul. If I work for the government now, I would be scared as hell because I don't think I've got a pension. We used to think we have oil reserves. I think we've got empty barrels at the moment. So, but let's say the pensions are all intact and everything is hunky-dory. The pension funds will be taken over from state employees under the per capita approach. Banks will not pull up their roots and leave. I think in actual fact, like I just said, the opposite will be true. They'll come to a sound economy.
Sorry, I should have leave, but thank you very much for the presentation here. And thanks to everybody for the positive attitude. Everything boils down to attitude and discipline. And Mossel Bay is a disciplined town. And we've been here for a year and 4 days now, so we just got here just before lockdown. And I found it very, very positive in this whole area. Coming from Gauteng, it's a different story. Can we just get a telephone number for Rian and Mia call you to contact you people?
Mia, wil jy nie jou dom gaan hier skryf vir my nie? Rian sê so, ek skryf sommer jou nou. Anybody that wants to make a note of Rian's number?
I can't remember it. I'll give you
The cards, okay. Rian will give anybody that's interested to make contact his card. So did you move to Mossel Bay now?
Yes, of course.
Welcome in the Cape.
Thank you.
Mia's number, Mia's in Mossel Bay. If you got a pen, you can make a note. Okay, I'm going to give you the number. It's 083 270 4188. Okay. 083 270 4188. Mia van Wyk. And the bank PIN number? No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Wat is die populasiesyfer? Die vraag is, wat is die populasiesyfer van tussen blank en kleurling of bruin? Kleurling op die oomblik is 49%. Baie naby aan dit, blank dink ek is rondom 16%. Ek kan nie vir die getal uit ek nie op het nie. Maar ons sê altyd in die Weskaap op die oomblik vorm die minderhede wat blank, bruin, Khoi, San, Muslim is, vorm nog steeds die meerderheid op die stadium.
Just out of interest, what are the plans in for influx control when we get this right?
Okay, question is, what are the plans for influx control when we get this right? Question comes up regularly. The moment you carry a yes vote in a referendum on independence, you may close your borders under international law. If the host country at that stage perform any act of hostility, you may under international law declare your secession. However, at that point, you must have ticked the boxes. You must have the majority support of the people, and you must tick all the other boxes. But borders will close. That's why it's important to have a holistic approach. If you tell me again I can have a referendum tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I'm going to say no thank you. You have to have everything in place. From a border control point of view, our border is 1,381 kilometers. You have to know where every road, every river, every mountain pass crosses your border. You've got to be able to man and deploy an effective force to control your border. Then you stop the influx. And then your immigration rules will kick in. People ask me, he says, I've got a company and I've got 10 guys from Zimbabwe working for me because the local oaks are just terrible. I know the feeling. So his question is, so are you going to now send them back to Zimbabwe? Answer is no. If the guy that is here legitimately, he's got his paperwork, he's going to be issued a work visa, he's going to be issued a temporary residency visa, and he can work. If he violates those visas, he will be deported. We will strongly recommend, with the effective police force after independence, if you think of picking up a stone and throwing it on the N7, you will be caught and you and your family will be deported.
Thank you.
We're not in this game to be favorites. It will be tough love. Your acts of terrorism will stop at the day of independence. That's why we're doing this.
Will we build a wall?
I would love us to build a wall because I'm a building contractor. I would like that job. It is not feasible to build a wall, but there is a lot of developments in terms of artificial intelligence of border control. I'll give you one example. A cable that's underground with a V of effective reconnaissance and talking to a drone which is connected and supported by a satellite link which will detect and then only deploy your human capital. That is where we are, or what we're looking at on border control. Not building walls. In fact, if you look at the border, we have a very short border with the Eastern Cape. We don't expect much problems to the Western Cape. Most of the border basically are mountains anyway. I have. Oh. No, I have. You're talking to an ex-military veteran. I definitely have. Got people very upset, and I said to them, we will definitely have a 2-year conscription again, and I got my head chopped off. No. Conscription will work on a voluntary basis first. You'll ask for a voluntary force. If you do not get enough people to populate that force, then you'll go to conscription, but it will be conscription recognizing people's qualifications, skills, and things like that. Yeah.
Would CapeXit convert to a political party? Post independence?
You would not be able to pay me enough. No, not at all. We were asked that question by one of the political party leaders the other day, and I jokingly said, "You're concerned because of our numbers?" And he looked me in the eye and he said, "Yes." And I said, "I can tell you now, we will never become a political party." I always say to people, I want to get the independence thing done and then retire and go fishing.
One last question. Western Cape becomes independent and it's not accepted by the current government or political parties.
Question is, what happens when the local government, provincial government and national government does not accept our strive, our drive, our claim for independence? We actually work on, or the eventuality that the local government is going to say no to a referendum, which they've done already. I think personally they've jumped the gun, but they've done so. That would be the first box you tick. You've got to get the support of the people, you've got to get it audited so they can see how many people support it. You'll then go to the local government and say, "Here's my audited database, we need a referendum." They will say, "No, we expect it," because they're working on the national mandate. Then you will notify, only then, because the most important part of this exercise is the will of the people. If you don't have the people support on your side, you can do cartwheels, you can write what you want to, you can publish what you want to, it's all going to be for nothing. Because the international community is going to ask you, where is the support of the people? So then we'll go to the national government and say, we have requested a referendum from the local government, they said no. Again, the President of South Africa can only call a national referendum. However, he can, under provincial mandate, ask the provincial government to call the referendum. If they say no, which we expect they will, if they don't, it will be a very good move on their side. But if they no, we're back to the international route. That is why we're developing the international angle at the same time. That's why we became a member of the Organization of Emerging States, because we fully expect this to land up in the international courts.
International court studies, all right? We know we've got no, this country is lawless at the moment, so they don't give them. So what happens then? So we're at the international stage now, okay, and the international guys say, oh no, you can't do this. And these guys will say, of course you can, you can do anything you want to do. What then?
Question is, what if the South African government basically ignores international law? That's what we're saying. Okay. The South African government undersigned and ratified both Articles 1 and Articles 20 of the political and humanitarian law. There's a law international that states that any humanitarian cause that takes preference in importance above the constitutionality of a country will be ratified and accepted by the international community. So if the international community says, have a referendum, South Africa says, no, we're not interested, then and only then can you say we secede and we declare UDI. And get military support. Yeah. No country in the world will intervene in the sovereign affairs of any other country unless it's been sanctioned by international humanitarian law. It simply won't happen.
You mentioned the Swiss system. It's a big wish if this comes off the ground. Will it be similar to the Swiss system? And I've got a question that leads from that. The Swiss system is based on cantons. And I think in Switzerland you have maybe at least one referendum about something every year. At least one. Will it be on the same basis? And who controls the referendum? The central government or the cantons? Or the province or the district?
Question is, will it function along the lines of the Swiss canton system? And will there be referendums on any relevant issue, and who will control the referendum? What I will tell you is that the first and most important referendum, the one on independence, will not be controlled by the IEC. We will have international supervisors and people looking and controlling that aspect. The answer to the question is yes. It will be modeled along the lines of the canton system. Going back to, you'll have 6 district governments, and the people in that district government on a municipal level will decide about their own affairs. So let's say the Swiss has got a percentage or formula. If you have 100,000 people, let's say Mossel Bay, then there's a formula that says at least 15,000 people must in a referendum vote for anything. You want the VAT to be square, not round. So when you comply to that requirement of the percentage of people, you go to the referendum and you vote this thing to be square, then it will become square. So that is the fundamental basis of a direct democracy. It's accountability and transparency. CapeXit is die vraag was waar ons befondsing en Rian is nog niet bij ons, maar ons het al gehoord, ons word befonds deur George Soros en ons word befonds deur die vrye messewaarts en ons I wish. Nee. CapeXit het van die begin af het die direkteure van CapeXit die onkostes gedra van CapeXit. Ons is nou op die fase en Rian sal met die afsluiting daaroor praat. Ons is op die fase waar ons moet uitreik na die mense toe wat ons ondersteun en vra vir befondsing. Ons het met Rian se fiets toe geweldige goeie ondersteuning gekry. Mense wat akkommodasie aangebied het, befondsing, voertuie, diesel, al daai goed. So op die oomblik beweeg ons na die punt toe van ons moet nou begin vra vir die publiek vir fondsing.
Ja, op daai punt, skies, ons beter gekwalifiseerd om daai vraag te vra. Die punt is, wanneer ons met iemand staan en praat en sê, luister, jy moet registreer, jy weet, dis ook nie baie moeilik om te sê, registreer en donate R10 of R1 of wat ook al. Ons moet kyk na 'n stelsel wat baie makliker gaan maak vir mense om geld in die rekening in te betaal, as wat hy by sy komputer nou moet gesit en 'n internetbetaling te doen, en jy weet waarvan ek praat. Want die meeste mense is like, maar as ek van hulle kan sê, hier is 'n selfoon daar, sy sit jou nommer in bankrad, soos wat julle in die kerk het. Ek bedoel, dit is mos 'n, ja, jy weet, so ietsie ontwerp, dat het vir ons baie makliker gaan maak om geldjies by mense te kry. Dat hulle nou nie 'n internetbetaling moet doen as sulks nie. So dit is ietsie waar ons kan werk.
Jy is absoluut reg. Die punt wat jy maak is die besonderheidsfaktor van om geld te skenk of 'n donasie te maak. Die probleem met donasies maak, as jy 'n debietorde teken vir R50, dan kos die debietorde gewoonlik vir weet jy wat, R20 of R50. So ons wil kyk, en dit gaan basies terugval na Rian se kant toe, na wat in Engels noem 'n recurring payment. Wat jy dit laai op jou rekening, ek gee R50 'n maand, maar anders as met 'n debietorde kan jy net boot in jou rekening en gaan dit stop as jy wil. Jy hoef nie hier 20 hoepels te spring om te stop nie. Maar jy is heeltemal reg, ons begin nou kyk daarna. If that's all, then I'm going to close off and say thank you, baie dankie. Ek gaan hom nou vir Rian gee. Dankie.
Julle, dit was 'n lang sessie, vreeslik baie dankie vir julle tyd en aandag en vir die vrae wat julle gevra het. Ek wil nie oor geld praat nie. Ek wil nie oor geld praat nie, want ons wil nie bedel nie. Dit gaan nie daaroor nie. Dit gaan oor 'n vrywillige behoefte om te help. En as iemand nie die vrywillige behoefte aan die dag lê en sê, hierdie ouens kan nie alles self bekostig nie, want julle kan verstaan, die prosesse wat deurgegaan moet word om by 'n referendum uit te kom, want dis eintlik ons einddoel. Iemand het gevra van ons 'n politieke party word. Niemand in CapeXit stel belang in politiek nie. Ons wil onafhanklik word. Dit wil sê, daarna, na onafhanklikheid, kan die normale prosesse voortgaan. Maar om daar te kom, vat petrol geld. Ons beskou onsself as 'n bus, as 'n vehicle. Ons is op pad na 'n destination. CapeXit is net 'n voertuig om by 'n referendum uit te kom. Maar daai bus het petrol nodig. So as daar enige iemand hier is wat voel hy wil vir ons 'n bydrae lewer, ek vra nie, iemand het nou die dag van my vra, hoeveel het jy nodig? Wat wil jy hê? Hoeveel het jy, kan nie vir jou sê nie. Ek sal nooit vir jou sê, gee my 10.000, gee my 5.000, gee my 1000, nooit. Dit moet uit jou hart uitkom. En as dit op 'n recurring basis of 'n herhaaldelike basis kan wees, uitstekend, maar dit sal altyd jou keuse bly. Direkte demokrasie. Die keuse moet by jou lê. So as daar iemand is na die tyd met daaroor wil praat, baie welkom, ons sal dit geweldig waardeer, want die bus het brandstof nodig. En die voorstel dat ons dit maklik maak vir mense om 'n bydrae te lewer, ek gee aandag daaraan. Ons is besig om die tegnologie, 'n bietjie tegnologiese roete te volg en tegnologie in te span om van ons 775.000 lede 'n bietjie hulp te kry om hierdie ding gedoen te kry. Ja, elke ou rand gee uit die aard van die saak. Jy kan sien waar lê die impak, maar die bus om by onafhanklikheid uit te kom het brandstof nodig. Dit is 'n feit. Julle vreeslik dankie vir julle tyd. Geniet iets nog. Willem, ek weet nie waar Willem bou seker nog aan of iets. Vir julle ouens by Baanjaard, koop in my kop. By Reed Valley, verskriklik baie dankie. En dis vir jou roete hiernatoe. Ons het môre 'n soortgelyke byeenkoms in plek. As julle meer inligting daaroor wil hê, familie het of vriende het wat in daai wêreld bly, is welkom om te kom kuier. Baie dankie julle, veilig terugreis en dankie vir julle teenwoordigheid.